Steve here with Table Rock Tea Company. We are in the middle of August now and we've harvested the tea several times, but I felt like it was about time for me to give you kind of a step-by-step overview of how tea is harvested and processed. So we're going to actually take you from plucking all the way through the processing to when it's finally, put in the bag or in the cup, so to speak. And yeah, so hopefully you'll learn something. Stick around to the end. As always, please like and subscribe. If you're watching this channel, you probably already know that tea goes in flushes. And so in a flush, you might have 3 or 4 flushes per year. And within a flush, you're going to get maybe 2 or 3 harvests within that flush as well, just depending on the weather. It is very, very weather dependent. Now, what we're going to harvest is right here. 2 leaves and a bud. That's a standard pluck. This is the bud right in the middle, and these are the 2 leaves below it. It's nice and floppy, and we're just going to pick it. I'll film some of our harvesters that are in the field today doing that, but you can see that this plant is very much ready to be plucked. It's probably a little bit overdue, in fact. And you can see all the new growth at the top. That's just what we pick, is just that top part. And like I said, it's very weather dependent. So we had a series of dry weather and then a bunch of rain, and finally the right combination of temperature and rainfall to give us a nice flush this time. So we're hoping for a pretty good harvest today. Now, most of our tea is in shade, or at least partial shade. Nevertheless, we still try to get out here as early as we can, and we try to get all of our pluckers out of the field by noon. It just gets too hot, and anyway, it gives us time to process the tea. But yeah, we try to be good to our workers, and so like I said, even though it's under shade like you see there, I'll kind of do that. We're out here at 7 or 8 in the morning and usually try to wrap it up by noon. So we have some of our crew in the front here, and there are others in other fields, but I'll just kind of zoom in and show you what they're picking. It's basically the 2 leaves and a bud, and yes, we do everything by hand here, and that does make for the best tea. You can do these mechanically, but you're always going to get pieces of stem and stuff like that. So yeah, long process, but that's what gives you guys the best tea. We actually had aprons custom made for our workers here. I'll kind of go over these features for you in just a second, but on the back is a pouch for a camelback. You can see Chris over there has got his camelback on, and so that lets them stay hydrated. The pouch itself goes on like an apron. It's kind of a kangaroo pouch, we call it, and it has several features on it. My favorite is that this front is waterproof. So they put it in if you're brushing up against a plant in the morning when there's dew, you don't get soaked. So there is a pocket for a phone. There is another pocket for pruners. And yeah, it's just a good apron. It's also sort of bowed out in the front, you can see, so that they have an easier time putting it in. And then on the bottom, and I'll walk over here, maybe Abigail will show us the bottom, how it rolls up. So right there, it's clipped. That bottom is open, so they can just unroll it, unclip it, and drop their tea into the bag. This is one of our newer fields. We call it the backyard. So these are small plants. But one of the things I wanted to show you was over here. These are the supers that each individual plucker has their bag with their name on it. And we make sure that we put that under a tree so that it is out of the sun, because otherwise the tea will start to basically stew and wither too fast. So after the pickers come in from the field, they've got their bags full and all of that, we weigh them in, and we've got our sheet here, and each picker puts their numbers down. We do that in pounds and in kilograms. Of course, you gotta tear the bucket first, but this is how this pouch works. You can see that the bottom just clips open, and then you can dump the leaves right from the bottom. And that's how we do it. After they're weighed in, we dump it onto these withering racks and spread them out. and that's going to let the tea wither. By the end of the day, hopefully both of these racks will be full, and we'll show you how we process from there. We ended up picking about 75 pounds of fresh leaf today, and that's what this looks like. So we've got 2 full withering beds, which is very nice. And you can see everybody entered in here. That's all their weights. We'll pay them by their weight once we calculate how much it withers. And right now, just so you can see, it's still not ready to go yet. There are signs that we look for withering. I'll show you that once we get back to it later this evening. Probably it's going to be in another several hours before it's ready to roll. This has been withering now for about 7 hours. We are ready to put it into the roller. And what we're looking for on the withering process is that the leaves are nice and limp, and that they can compress together into a ball and hold more or less the shape of that ball. And then we're also wanting to smell it and make sure that it still has that nice fruity smell to it. It's kind of sweet. I wish I could get that on camera, but I can't. Yeah, so those are the parameters. We definitely want to keep that fruity smell. You can over wither and lose that, and that does translate into the flavor of the tea. But we are about ready to roll, so let's do it. We transfer all of the withered tea into these bins so we know roughly how many parts we have, because these rollers are all different sizes. The one we are using is a CR45, which means that it is 45 centimeters in diameter on the hopper. And this one will hold about like 20 to 30 pounds of fresh leaf per batch. So we know we had about 75 pounds, so we're gonna have to split that into 3. So we've got 9 bins here, so we'll do 3 bins per load. So this hopper, we want to be pretty packed, but not crazy packed. The more full the hopper is, the tighter you can make the pressure, or the more you can put the pressure on the tea, and that makes for a better roll. And you'll see kind of what that translates to in just a second once we get this machine going. So again, we're going to be doing 3 of these bins per hopper, and then we'll get it rolling. Okay. So this just swings over, and then the lid compresses it. Takes a while to do it. This is spring loaded, so it's not going to get bound up as the machine is rolling. But if you look in here, you can see how much we've compressed down. It's pretty much almost halfway. So, and now we are ready to roll. On this too, you can see the directionality of the roll. It goes into the, I guess, the concave part of those ribs that are there. And that's gonna beat up the tea, but it's not gonna chop it up as fine as like a CTC machine. So yeah, it'll leave it more or less whole, but it'll get all those juices flowing. What we're looking for is what we call soaping or foaming. And I'll try to zoom in here, but you can see the almost soapy bubbles forming on the ribs of the machine. And so that's getting all nice and juicy. We roll for 3 minutes, and then we're going to fluff up what's called the dual, which is the mass of rolled leaf, breaking that apart, and we're going to re-roll it, and we'll do that 3 times. You know, when we first started, we were very small, literally rolling everything by hand. So we've been very appreciative of every step of the way that God's allowed us to increase. So, you know, now we're using a pretty big roller. We actually have another bigger roller than this over for where the new factory is going to be and all that. But man, you know, I look at that machine and I think, I can't even imagine rolling 75 pounds by hand now. So, yeah, small steps, but looking back, we've come a long way. Next, we spread the tea out onto these oxidizing trays. These are perforated baking sheets, and those are going to then go into our proofer to keep everything at a high humidity and low temperature so that it can continue to oxidize until it all turns black. We also set part of this aside to make our smoked Carolina Lapsang, so those will go into the smoker in just a minute. Once the tray is finished and full, it goes into the proofing oven. This has water in a chamber below, and so this whole thing will be filled more or less with not steam, but super, super high humidity. You'll see moisture on the glass and everything like that. Carolina Lapsang is one of our signature blends. It is a smoked tea, and for that we literally put it in a smoker. This particular smoker has been used for nothing other than tea, and we actually smoke it with a combination of hickory and applewood. But what's kind of cool, I don't know if you can see it, yep, we actually have our own hickory nuts and applewood whips from our apple trees here. So homegrown smoked, so that's our Carolina Lapsang. We're about 2/3 of the way finished loading the racks, but even with this short amount of time, you can see how the tea is starting to oxidize. So you see all those yellows and browns and oranges. That's what that is doing. And so we are going to let those oxidize to turn into a black tea, and we will be back at it tomorrow to finish the baking process. So the proofer is running for several hours, and you can see that it's foggy on the window, which means obviously there's high moisture content in there. And here's what the trays look like, being completely oxidized. It's got a very distinct smell to it. Then those get taken over here to our oven, and this is where they will get baked. And kind of look in here. This is a rotating oven, so these pans are filled with tea, and then these rotate so that it gets a consistent heat, and that's how we dry the tea. Checking the smoker. Yep, see all that smoke coming out. Whoa. Okay, obviously it's been smoky. So yeah, same thing, nice and black. And the final product looks like this. This is why we call it bear claw, because this particular one kind of comes out like little claws, and of course then we'll mill it and put it into the sachets. The inside of the hammer mill has these spinning blades and then a screen of whatever size you want to do. So anything that goes into the chute goes into the chamber, the blades spin, and when it's small enough to fall through the screen, then the material goes down into a catch bucket. After the tea is milled, it goes into the bags. Our bagging machines use all natural paper. There is a cellulose material that adheres the sides, so there's no plastics, no glue, it's all biodegradable. And this is the product as it goes in. You can see it's been now homogenized. This then goes out onto a weighing scale. Let's see if I can get in there. Once it gets to the proper weight, the trapdoor opens, and then it drops down the chute. There, let's see if you can see that. Yep, down the chute. and then into the bag where it gets heat sealed on the back and the sides, and the bottom gets heat sealed and cut. And that's it. So then you're left with your final bag, which is pretty much like any tea bag you'd find on a grocery store shelf. After the tea is bagged, it's put into its final packaging to go on our store shelves, online, and in other retailers around the country. Well, there's a brief overview of how we make our real American tea here at Table Rock Tea Company. Before you guys go crazy in the comments and say, hey, that's not how we grow the plants, or that's not how we make tea, just know we've been all over the world too. We've been in this game for a while. This is how we make our tea here. There are literally thousands of ways to make tea. There's no real wrong way to make tea. So hopefully you guys learned a little bit, at least as far as our processes go. Definitely come out for a tour sometime and see the big picture. Thanks again for watching. Stay tuned to see what else is brewing here at Table Rock Tea Company.